In this session, we are going to walk you through some of the licensing options for Nerdio for Azure, how we have set Nerdio for Azure up to focus on a consumption-based model, how to interpret your bill from Nerdio, and the difference between our two desktop-focused SKUs, Professional and Enterprise. Enjoy the session.
And we are going to start out by talking about licensing and transacting Nerdio. So the first concept that I want to bring up is this distinction between a licensed usage versus consumption-based usage. And a lot of times this could be somewhat confusing, so I want to make sure we clarify that from the get-go. But licensed usage is, I think, what most of us are used to initially when we deal with subscription-based services. If you think about Office 365, let's say you're buying an E3 SKU, you buy X number of licenses of that SKU. As soon as you buy it, those licenses become available to you. They can then be assigned to individual users, but whether or not they're assigned does not affect whether you pay for them, right? So you can buy 100 licenses, assign one of them, and still be paying for all 100 because you've committed to Microsoft in this case that you are going to be purchasing 100 licenses of that particular SKU, that particular product. Nerdio Private Cloud, MPC, is licensed in that way. A consumption-based model is more, more like, let's call it like electricity, right? So when you get your bill for electricity, you're getting a bill in arrears, meaning you're getting a bill in the month that's subsequent to the month when the electricity was consumed. And that is a similar model with all the public clouds because you are consuming things only for the time that they're used. So if you're buying a VM or you're buying a certain amount of storage or VPN or bandwidth, you don't really know in advance how much you're going to need. So you're basically, you're allocating or you're starting to use that particular product. In Azure terminology, you provision or you deploy it. And then while it's deployed and provisioned, the meter is, so to speak, running. There is, literally a meter associated with each and every resource in Azure that has its own pricing information, as we looked at in the previous sessions. And then at the end of the billing period, maybe a month, it may be some other period, you get an invoice, which is the sum total of all of the different resources, how long they ran, if the billing is per second billing, then how many seconds they ran, at what rate, etc. So it's a much more sort of complex view of the world, but it's a lot more precise and exactly aligned with how much usage you've gotten out of the system. So the pro to licensing models is they're easy to understand, easy to budget for. The con is that you're not always using all of the licenses because you're not always able to anticipate the need for how many licenses you need at any given time. As opposed to on the consumption-based model, you're only paying for what you consume. You're not paying for anything you buy in advance without using it first, but it's a lot more difficult to predict what that consumption is going to look like. So why am I telling you all this? It's a license model. In Nerdio for Azure, it's a consumption model, which follows those principles where you get billed or the partner gets billed on consumption in the month following the month when the licenses were consumed in the previous month. So for instance, today is January, and January 1st, an invoice was generated for each and every partner in the system that basically will be the sum total of all of their accounts inside of Nerdio for Azure and how many licenses each one of those accounts consumed. Let me show you an example of what that looks like. So let's go in to Nerdio for Azure, and let's look at some sample invoices here. So if you go under invoices, you can see here that these are the invoices for a particular partner. So let's look at, this simple code invoice. If we click on details, under here, well, there's only one account here, so we'll look at another one in a second, but you can see the invoice looks like this. It shows you who the partner is, which account it is, what license SKU is being used, and we'll go into the distinction of the different plans or editions or SKUs in a minute. And then it shows you the total number of licenses, and then the unit price, and the total, and then any discounts that may apply, and then sort of the grand total that takes the discounts into account. So what you'll notice here is there is a non-integer number of licenses, even though you can obviously only assign, integer number of licenses at any given time. So why is that? And the reason for this is if you click on the reconcile button, what you'll see is a report that shows you how many licenses were being consumed on every given day of the previous month. So this is the December invoice. So that means we're looking at November usage. And you can see that we had 5, and then a license was removed on the 16th, and it was 4, and then was added back on the 17th. And then there were 1,500 users added on the 19th, and then all of them removed on the 20th, or the account was likely deleted at this point. So if you look at this consumption or this usage on a daily basis, and you average it out for the month, right? So you have some days that were at 0, some days that were really high, and some days that were at 4 or 5. You get this number as the average. And then this is the average that gets multiplied by the unit price of this particular SKU, this particular plan. Let's look at another account, one that maybe has a few more customers. So if you look at this partner account, go to view details. Here again, you can see this is the partner who's getting this invoice. Their invoice includes all of these various accounts. It shows you what plan each one of those accounts is using. It shows you the date range, and then it shows you the licenses. And again, you'll see that these are non-integer numbers as a result of the utilization varying day to day. So you can see how it can vary day to day. So a common scenario is, as you may imagine, is a partner brings on a customer on the first day, they may have 4 licenses, then they start adding a group of test users of, let's say, 20 users. So now they have 24. And then as they go live, it may be mid-month or end of the month, they may have 100, right? So when they get their invoice on the first of the next month, it will take that daily usage into account. Licenses are always going to be based on these reconciliation and invoice reports. They'll get them always in the same day of the month, right? It always comes out on the first day of the month. It's always for the prior month, and it's always prorated based on the daily usage for each and every one of their accounts. So imagine if you have a partner who's reselling multiple accounts. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 customers. And this is obviously all available as CSV exports as well, where they can filter the data and do all kinds of manipulation with it. But just so from a presentation standpoint, there are 6 or 7 accounts here. Each one has its own usage and cost, and then it's all rolled up into this total. Any discounts that are relevant apply, and then you get a grand total on the bottom. Okay, so now this is what a partner would pay Nerdio, and then if they wanted to know, okay, well, how much do I bill each one, or maybe not how much do I bill each one of my customers, but at least how much of this, $101 is attributed to a particular customer. You can look it up here, and it will tell you, okay, it's 870 or 8%, 8.5% of this total is associated with this particular customer, 5103, right? And now if someone says, well, this looks really strange, why am I getting billed for only 0.71 licenses? I would have expected this to be either lower or higher. Then they can dig in more, they can click reconcile, they can find that particular customer, and then they can, so here's 5103, and they can see what their usage was, and like, hey, look, you only had this account at 444 during those 3 days, at 5 during those days, and then it looks like the account was deleted and there was no more utilization for the rest of the month. So the professional is really meant for smaller organizations that have very basic IT needs, and then enterprise is meant for more complex, fully featured, product for more complex environments or organizations that are larger. So what do we mean by smaller organizations? This is typically organizations with 25 users or less. So the out-of-the-box configuration, so what gets provisioned right out of the box when you deploy Nerdio. So, in all cases, you get a domain controller, file server, an RDS gateway, and an RDS session host. In the case of enterprise, you also get an ADFS proxy for single sign-on, and you get an image for golden desktop image for VDI. So VDI is not a capability of the professional plan, again, given the fact that this is for smaller organizations with simpler needs. And then the way professional comes out is it comes out in these templates. And if you click on that view templates box, it will show you the 3 available templates. They don't affect the cost of or the price of NFA. The price is still $8 per user or per desktop user per month. But depending on the size of the environment that this is being provisioned for, you get to choose one of these 3 options, and they could be tweaked once they're provisioned, but they come pre-configured. So you can see for a P5, which is meant for 1 to 5 users, you get a really small domain controller, really small file server, really small gateway, and RDS session host. You get 512 gigabytes of shared storage. Backup is enabled for a file server and RDS session host, and there's no VPN, assuming that an organization of such a small size doesn't need it. Then if you go to P15, you get slightly larger infrastructure, you get more robust backup, and you also get VPN capabilities. And then P25, again, slightly larger environment to support that number of users. This is really convenient because when you provision one of these, it's already sort of set up to the right size. But when you do enterprise, it actually comes out sized very small with the intention that, well, you may have an indeterminate number of users. It may be 10 users, it may be 1,000 users. So the administrator who's doing the provisioning of the account will then need to go in and tweak the environment based on the size that it needs to be. Under infrastructure, you get server management, domain management, VPN management, onboarding tool set, logs and audit trail in both editions. With enterprise, you also get something called Azure Hybrid Usage Support that we talked about, right? So that's something that's available for larger organizations. Smaller organizations don't use AHU. Hybrid Active Directory, we'll deal with that in detail later on. On-ramp regions, RDS collections, automated notifications, and support for Azure reserved instances is actually available in both. When you go to manage users, you can do user management for RDS users. VDI users is only available in enterprise. GPU users only available in enterprise. You can manage Office 365 users and license assignment. To use AD Federation, you have to have enterprise. Group management, the shared mailbox management is available in both. From a security standpoint, you get content and threat filtering available in both products. Firewall management only with enterprise, and two-factor authentication is also something that's available only for enterprise. Backup and DR, you get backup with both, and DR only with enterprise. On the optimization side of things, you get performance monitoring, desktop auto-scaling, and scheduled server auto-scaling, only part of enterprise. And then partner tools, things like cost estimator, white labeling, and support, you get with both products. I would say the enterprise plan used much more frequently than professional plan, and even in environments that have small number of users. So the caveat for using professional is you kind of have to meet 2 criteria. You have to be a small organization, right, as defined by 25 users or so or less, and you have very basic needs. Now, if you are either not small or your needs are not basic, then you jump right into the enterprise tier. And an example of that would be, let's say you have a 10-person company that maybe wants to maintain their existing Active Directory and wants to deploy something like hybrid AD, or they want to take advantage of RDS collections for some auto-scaling capabilities, or they need to use Azure Hybrid Usage. So any of these features, which are generally more prevalent in larger organizations, but could certainly be used by smaller organizations. If any of those are necessary, then even though the company may have fewer than 25 users, they automatically switch into the enterprise tier due to the complexity and the requirements of the environment.